Peeples.
How
are you, Jen?
Good. You?
Very good. Bless me, viewers, for I have sinned. It has been almost 2 months since my last appearance on the show, and folks, do not attempt to adjust your sets. I am your host for today, and I plan on being your host once every 4 weeks or so for the foreseeable future. When Jen was added as the 5th co-host to our ever-expanding list, there was some concern that an odd number of weeks in the rotation would be difficult for some people to work a schedule around. Mostly just me. But anyway, Matt has graciously allowed me to sit in the seat of power once a month, and I intend to abuse that power for all I'm worth. This will also give Matt a much-needed opportunity to take the occasional weekend off, because that guy does too much anyway. We are a live public access call-in show offering atheists in the Austin area the opportunity to interact with the public and vice versa, answering questions, discussing relevant topics, and correcting many of the misperceptions about who we are and what we do and don't believe. We are sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. You can visit the Atheist Community of Austin website at www.atheist-community.org. Also, when you visit, be sure to check out the Frequently Asked Questions page, where we will be answering many of your frequently asked questions, Audio and video from this program are available at our website. You can visit the specialty site for this show, www.atheist-experience.com. Click on Archives and you'll find a list of programs, including links to both audio and video downloads. The video is provided by Google Video. However, many of you who see the show are finding us through YouTube, and if you're watching the show on YouTube, you're actually missing out on the broader context, because the YouTube show, YouTube is actually a place where our fans extract individual clips of this show and just replay their favorite bits. And so while they are excellent clips, they're not representative of the entire show. And so if you've been missing out, make sure you're going to Google Video and not YouTube. Also, very exciting news. I believe it's new since the last time I was on. You can now stream the show live as it happens, which is right now and every Sunday from 4:30 to 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time by going to www.ustream.tv/channel/the-atheist-experience. You can, of course, find out this information through atheist-experience.com. You can also join the chat room, which is very exciting. I'm told that there are now over 70 people in the chat room right now. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. Visit www.nonprofitsradio.com for more information. The next episode of The Nonprofits, as it's every 2 weeks, will be next week, November 29th. There was no show yesterday. Am I done yet? Part of the responsibility of sitting in this chair is reading the boring announcements, which most of you guys will be skipping past anyway. But here we go, because this is important stuff if you're in Austin. In addition to our lectures, television programs, and podcasts, the ACA hosts a number of regular social events, including Atheist Happy Hour every Thursday beginning at around 7 p.m. at the Dog and Duck Pub located at the corner of 17th and Guadalupe. We have weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, except for the first Sunday of each month when we host our lecture series at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. Next month's lecturer will be Dr. James D. on December 7th. The topic will be The Truth About the Christmas Story. There are 2 stories, neither one happened, and serious scholars know it. And I know from recent experience that these lectures are often also recorded and put online, so keep an eye on atheist-community.org if you want to find that. Let's see, finally, Every week after the TV show, we have a dinner at Threadgill's in South Austin. The address is 301 West Riverside Drive, just south of downtown, at Barton Springs Road. And everybody who is atheist or atheist friendly is welcome to attend, chat, have dinner, enjoy yourselves. However, as we always say, please do not show up if your intention is to preach, proselytize, provoke, punch, pressure, punish, prevaricate, or pie in the face. Okay, look, if I'm going to occasionally sit in for the universally loved Matt Dillahunty, I have to make some token effort to outdo him in some way, even if it's just alliterative lists. That's all for the regular announcements. I have two special announcements. The winter solstice party for the ACA will occur on December 20th at 7 p.m. You can visit the ACA website for details. Also interesting to note for you locals and also to you international folks, last week, in the middle of the week, we had the Texas State Board of Education hearings on evolution in textbooks. Again, longtime watchers of the show will probably remember that we went through the same thing in 2003, and all the crazy creationist board members are back for another round. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend this one, but Martin did a fantastic job of posting his story at the Atheist Experience blog. That's atheistexperience.blogspot.com, and you can check that out and join in. And I'm sure the next time Martin hosts, he will tell you all about it himself. Okay, so as I've seen Matt do, this is the pause button where we're done. And here's Jen. You and I are going to be working together on future shows, so we're going to become even better friends than we are now. What do you got?
Well, you know, we got an email earlier this week. Mm-hmm. It was a guy who, one of his closing comments was this. It said, "What is the point of defending atheism if you are of no more worth than the chicken dinner I had last week at good old KFC?" And I found this to be really ironic in light of a blog post that appeared on October 30th. On some of you may have seen it by now. It was a blog called The Virtuous Woman. And it was about this woman who has convinced her 4-year-old daughter that she is wretched and sinful and in need of redemption.
She's a Christian.
Yes.
I mean, pretty much is the territory.
So, you know, I find it very ironic that we've got a theist calling us worthless or whatever, and in fact, the theists are the ones who are teaching their kids this crap. And just as an illustration here, we've got this woman who, and I quote, "I do not believe in teaching children self-esteem or that they should feel good about themselves, because they should not." And she goes on to say that the problem is sin. "I never taught my daughter to sin. This is because she, as well as the rest of the human race, have inherited a sinful nature from Adam. From the moment we are conceived, we are sinners. We are born with a desire to sin. We are all God-hating and evil." Okay. So, well, my point on all this is that I don't defend atheism. I actively promote it. And I do so because it's a far better alternative than teaching our children that they are sinful, worthless, vile, and in need of redemption. So that's where I want to start with today's discussion, is this woman, what she's doing to her child, and a little bit about the impact this kind of child rearing has on other people that have commented by email.
Okay.
On that. So I guess let's get started here. First of all, this woman is actively harming her child. I mean, she's got this kid who, at 4 years old, has decided that she's got to turn to Jesus for help in being good. And when you delve into this email or this blog post a little bit, you find out that this child's sins consist of things like, tormenting her siblings and not doing what her mother told her to do. The horror. I have a 3-year-old son, so I know all about selective hearing, and we refer to it as not having our listening ears on. It's called being a normal child. So what we have is this woman who's taught her daughter that being a normal child is something that she has to get on her knees and beg for forgiveness for.
Well, of course, do you mind if I play Christian's advocate
Oh, sure, by all means.
a few times during this topic? Because, I mean, I can think of things that Christians would say, and the first thing they would say is, of course, normal human behavior is sinful. That's what original sin is all about, basically. So...
Yeah, so, and of course, my question, my response to that would be, assuming for a moment that I would buy that notion, what did this kid do to deserve that? This kid had nothing to do with that, no input on that, which that, in my mind, highlights the immorality of a system that would blame a small child for a sin committed by some alleged
Yeah, well,
ancestor.
you know, it's only recently that the Catholic Church thought their position on purgatory, which was, I think, originally invented to deal with the uncomfortable moral question of, we all know, as we have known for centuries, that little kids deserve to go to hell just because of original sin.
Yeah.
We're uncomfortable with that, so let's say that there's this place called purgatory where they can work off their sins for a little while. Now that there's no purgatory anymore, I'm not really sure what they think happens to the little kids at this point.
Yeah. I always actually wondered, wanted to hear from a Christian what happens to an unbaptized child or a child who is not old enough to understand your religious tenets. What do you think happens to them if they die? Since they
call in if you have an opinion about that.
Yeah. I'd really like to know how you reconcile that, because I know what some people say. If you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, you're going straight to hell. So if that's totally different, call and correct me. But there's another more insidious thing that's going on here with what this woman's teaching her child, and that is that she's not responsible for her own actions. In fact, she says that she was a sinner and could not control her sinful nature. So what you're teaching a child is that you don't have control over what you do. If you use drugs later in life, it wasn't because you made a choice to do that. You're just born sinful, and you can ask for God to forgive you, and He will. If you go and harm people with your actions, well, that's because you're a sinner, and you just ask for God to forgive you, and He will. So, I guess
sure. For a long time, it's occurred to me that the central tenet of Christianity is inconsistent with the notion of personal responsibility, which is why I find it ironic that Christian conservatives seem to be the ones who are talking about personal responsibility all the time, when their central thesis is everybody deserves horrible punishment, but you don't have to get it because God is so merciful. I mean, basically, according to Jack Chick cartoons that I've read, you can be pretty much the worst person in the world, and as long as you accept Jesus as your personal Savior before you die, it doesn't matter, you're in heaven.
Okay, well, I see we already have some callers here, so let me get through a couple more items here.
Well, we can go in whatever order you want.
Okay, well, you want to go ahead and go to the calls here?
Do you want to?
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Okay. First caller we have is Pete. Hello? Pete, are you there? Pete, you turn down your TV if you're not if you can hear me. You need to listen to your phone and not the TV. Sorry, Pete, you have 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I am talking to you. Hey, Pete, how you doing? Are you Pete?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. No, I'm Josh.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah, I was wondering why my phone went buzzy. Okay, I'm on. I'm
blame
Josh.
the call screeners.
From Florida.
Okay.
Who do a wonderful job ordinarily, but go on.
Okay.
How are you doing, Josh?
I'm doing all right. I was calling in because At my school, I'm a student in high school, and I'm trying to start an atheist club. We're calling it the Free Thought and Secular Club because we live in a really secular, or just a really theistic area, and everybody's a Christian. And if we called it the Atheist Club, it would really get on a lot of people's nerves. And
Yeah.
well, we have to have a teacher in the classroom to do this, and we found that no teachers at the school, even the atheist ones, would be willing to do it because they think it'd be detrimental to their job. They think they'd get fired.
That's
So,
unfortunate.
I was just wondering what you guys thought we should do about that.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, if they were actively preventing you from making an atheist club, then that would be one thing that would be actionable.
No, it's not like that.
But they're not. I don't see how you can force a teacher to sponsor you.
Yeah, on the other hand, I don't think that if they sponsor you, that's necessarily an endorsement of anything that you're doing with your club. So I think, if you have a teacher that you think would otherwise be willing to sponsor you, you could approach them again and say, look, you can even make a disclaimer that, you don't endorse what we're doing, but you're all in favor of freedom of association.
Have you thoroughly read the rules at your school to see?
Yeah, we've got a student notebook and everything, so we understand what we have to do. It's just we can't find anyone willing because of that. They think that they're going to get fired, or nobody wants to risk it.
Right. I mean, you can prove to them probably with the rule book and with state laws that they're not going to get fired, but you can't make them not be cowards. Gosh, I'm stumped.
Yeah, I don't.
All right. Well, thanks for asking.
Can you have a club after school that's not officially sponsored?
That's what I was thinking about too. If we might have to turn to that. And,
I mean, if you do that and get popular or something.
Because
if you do that and get a popular group, then maybe you'll have strength in numbers of some sort.
That's true.
I don't know. It's the only thing I can think of right now.
Well, thanks for that idea. Well,
Okay.
I'm going to go. Bye.
All right, good luck, Josh. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for calling. Do you want to read some more or take another call?
Let's go ahead and take another call.
Okay. Next we have Jerry. Jerry, are you there?
Good afternoon. How are you folks?
I'm fine. How are you?
Okay. Can you convince me or tell me why belief in most religions, Christianity chief among them, is not a mental illness?
I think I can make an effort because while I've heard some atheists argue that religion is a mental illness,
I
or
can't
even
hear you.
Is my microphone okay? While I've had while I've heard some atheists argue that religion is mental illness or even child abuse to teach to somebody, I don't generally hold with that point of view. One good reason that I think it's not, that it can be completely wrong but still not mental illness, is because people put a lot of different factors into making a decision, and one of them is peer pressure. And the fact that 80% of America and a large percent of the world already believes in Christianity means that there is sort of that safety in numbers things, where something that might seem crazy if you were the only one to believe it isn't nuts because you're influenced by your family and the other people around you. I mean, does that seem plausible to you? He can't hear me.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry. We're going to have to drop.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you on my end. Anyway, if you judge other things that people think and that act crazy, I see very little difference between what the religious fanatics think and do and mental illness.
I think you may be right that the actual beliefs are not that different from what a mentally ill person would believe, but I don't think you have to be crazy to follow a crowd.
Yeah, I agree.
Jerry, we're going to have to let you go. The conversation is a little hard when you can't hear us. We're just going to hope the sound quality is better for the next guy, but thanks for calling. Next person.
Yeah.
Excuse me for my terrible sexism.
Okay.
Should we keep rolling with it?
Yeah, sure.
All right, we've
Gotta-
got, a couple of callers from California coming
Yeah,
up
let's
next. Jerry, another Jerry, hello, are you there?
Hi, this is Jack.
Jack.
Oh, it's Jack. Okay.
Okay, I just have a quick question for you. A couple of days ago, I was talking with one of my friends. He's strong, hardcore Christian, and I'm an atheist. And somehow the discussion shifted to him claiming that people are naturally disposed and naturally have, it just naturally arises belief in God. And his justification for this was that throughout history, through numerous unconnected societies all over the world, like in India or Native Americans in America or England or wherever, society has always believed in God. And I want to know, why do you think the reason for this is?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I think what I think is that religion probably originally came about as a result of some primitive human, maybe not even fully human yet, trying to make sense of something. And, you know, one of the most obvious things in the sky every day would have been the sun. And so you see sun worship in lots of cultures, and that's not any mystery. That's a prominent feature in everyone's life, and it wouldn't have taken much intelligence for early humans to figure out that the sun was a source of warmth that made the plants grow, you know, and then in the winter when there was less sunlight, you know, things died off. And so it's not hard to see where, you know, just trying to understand how the world works, people came up with an explanation that seemed to make sense to them, but, you know, in the end it's proven not to be true. So, you know, we don't believe that Apollo pulls the sun across the sky with his chariot anymore.
Right.
But, you know, that seemed reasonable at the time.
Well, what do you think? Because you notice a shift, like ancient Greek gods, ancient Egyptian gods, I'm guessing, but I know for at least the ancient Greek gods, they really, at least from the human point of view, they're more of a burden. Where was the shift of a God, a conscious God that actually cares about you?
Okay, that one I think, you know, I was actually going to say something about the Greek gods because the early gods tended to be very anthropomorphic. They tended to be a lot like people. I mean, Zeus and Hera and all those people, they lived on Mount Olympus, which was a specific place. They had petty jealousies and they fought with each other, and they basically did very human-like things, and they were basically like people, only cooler. And first of all, I would say that people are pattern-seeking animals, and it's natural for us to recognize, oh, we do things with tools like make fire, which is pretty amazing. So how do we explain this sun thing? Well, we've got Apollo pulling it on his chariot. Even the Bible God in the early parts of the Bible is a lot more human-like than the later parts of the Bible, and he becomes even less human-like through the centuries of interpretation. So you've got a God who can't see through, can't fight a group of people because they have chariots of iron, right? So God has sort of a kryptonite-like substance in iron, And what's happened, I think, over the centuries is that as science has progressed more and more, and we understand more about our world, the sun doesn't actually have a chariot and it's actually millions of miles away, there's less for God to do. And religious people, in order to remain relevant, have had to make their religions more and more abstract. You see what I'm saying?
So let me just summarize what I'm getting at. You're saying that first, God came out as or was identified, came into existence in people's minds as an explanation for how the sun comes up, why it rains, or the grass grows, or whatever.
Right, sure. People see that they can do things with their brains, and so they attribute, they say, well, what makes the sun move? Must be a really big brain.
And then as society progressed, and, instead of having a bunch of sparsely dispersed families, you have bigger cities, societies, then people started putting more values of morality, because it would be in the best interest of the society?
Sure. I mean, moral edicts have more weight if you can say, oh, and by the way, the guy who made the universe agrees with me. Anything else?
No, thanks for taking my call.
Okay, I hope that helps. I mean, this is all pretty much my guess, because what happened, how religions were created, is kind of lost to history. Although I think Daniel Dennett has a book about that, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah.
But it's something about religion as an evolved concept. Anyway, do you want to get back to what you were saying, or take one call?
Why don't we take one more call, and then
All right.
we'll go back to the topic here.
One more call. We've got Brandon also from California. How are you?
Hello.
Hey, Brandon. How are you?
Oh, okay. Well, my name's Chuck from Boston.
Oh, well.
Okay. Sorry.
Anyway, that last caller, Jack, are you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, I see my mistake.
Yeah, that last
Brandon's
caller,
still
Jack,
Yeah.
he was wondering how do so many people get, how did so many people all over get, influenced by religion? Well, if you just look at the Inquisition, if you didn't believe what the church told you to believe, you were burned at the stake. That's a pretty good inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's not even, that you'll get burned at the stake. I think Sweden still has an official religion, an official state religion, and when a child's born, they're automatically listed as being a member of that religion as long as their parents are. Well, as Richard Dawkins has pointed out, that's kind of absurd. You have no idea what that child's eventual religious beliefs are going to be. And now I guess they have to fill out a piece of paper, some kind of form, and submit it to the state in order to opt out. Otherwise, they get taxed for being a member of this church. So, I guess that's one way to pump up the church
where was
voice.
that at?
I think it's Sweden, and I'm sure that some of our Swedish viewers will correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Well, I think that the Inquisition is a real big embarrassment for the church, and it's a real tough. It's very hard for them to explain what they did back then, and anybody who is considering religion. These people, they need to take a look at what their church did during the Inquisition. And I bring this Inquisition up all the time because, that's a big part of history. And I promise you that if the church today could get away with stoning me and you and atheists, anybody who doesn't believe what they believe, if they could get away with just putting us all in jail or, killing us, they would do it.
Ironically, do you know what many Christians say about the Inquisition now? Because you realize here in America, and especially Texas, most people are, the majority of Christians are Protestants. And so they say, oh, that was the Catholics. And they were really going after people who weren't Catholics. So really, this was people who were not true Christians going after Christians. So in their warped mind, they come up with ways of flipping it around. So actually, it was the atheists' fault that the Inquisition happened.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. It's Well, anybody I just think that, all you got to do is go to your computer, type in Inquisition, and you will get all kinds of horrible things that the church did in the name of God.
Oh yeah, I believe I actually did an entire Halloween show on the Inquisition once, and there was a Protestant Inquisition too. They just don't know about it.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is that, it's not over. You've still got the Catholic Church in Africa where there's an HIV epidemic that orphans, how many millions of kids every year, and you've got the Catholic Church in there destroying condoms and telling people don't use condoms because they don't work, and that if you do, you're going to get AIDS and you're going to die. And in fact, condoms are the best protection that people have, especially in a population where there aren't a lot of access to the antiretrovirals that would keep their viral load down.
Right, yeah.
So, they're still doing this, and there's an awful lot of blood on the hands of the Catholic Church because of that policy.
I've noticed that with this ID, the intelligent design, here lately the church is really trying to get their foot in the door of the public schools. And I'm 50 years old, so whenever I was in school, we were not influenced by the church, and and I don't even know if one of the books that I read, and it was kind of required reading at that time, was The Scarlet Letter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Have you read The Scarlet Letter?
Oh yeah.
Not only have I read The Scarlet Letter, but my soon-to-be brother-in-law is actually a descendant of Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Oh well, that would be. I think that anybody else who is looking for something besides just what the church tells you to think and what the church tells you to believe, read the book The Scarlet Letter, and make a decision, from that, or don't just let what your parents tell you or what your church tells you. You got to make up your own mind. You got to use your own brain. That's why you have it, and you got to have a lot of input, and not just from the church. And anyway, I suggest that read The Scarlet Letter.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great advice. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, actually, go ahead.
What?
Go ahead.
Oh.
Actually, I want to say, Chuck, thanks for talking about telling kids to use their own mind, and that kind of gets back to the topic I was discussing today.
Okay.
And that is that by teaching a child that there's some authority outside himself that he has to turn to feel good about himself, or maybe you don't even ever want him to feel good about him if you're raising him like this woman's raising her daughter. But if they have to look outside of themselves for validation for something, then they're never going to develop the ability to make their own decisions about stuff. And they'll grow up with this need to feel good, to find someone who will validate them. And believe me, there are people out there who will. And it won't necessarily be the way what you had in mind for your child.
Isn't the idea that God fills that role throughout their life?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because we got an email from a viewer who was brought up in one of these end-of-times households, and sort of the same kind of baggage where you have to, ask God for salvation and all that stuff. And so this is what she had to say about that. I'm going to read a portion of her email here. She says, I was unlucky enough to have been one of those children brought up in an end-of-times household. At the tender age of 6, I was certain that many of my loved ones who happened to be a different denomination were going to horrifically perish, and soon. The notion of people I loved having these monstrous things happen to them became a constant concern, practically an obsession. It got to the point where every time I heard a noise in the middle of the night, I would jolt awake, and for a split second, I would think the end of the world was happening. I suffered from anxiety attacks that only worsened as I grew older. I still suffer from generalized anxiety disorder, and I can't help but feel bitter that much of my childhood was buried under the weight of anxiety inspired by religious teachings. And so this is a woman who sent us an email to tell us she's been an atheist now for about a year. She's gradually losing the baggage of her upbringing. But she wanted to describe some of the things that she went through.
Oh, yeah.
So
I've heard it's very hard to get over, and I'm glad that I'm one of the ones who never had to.
yeah, and so I just keep thinking about this poor 4-year-old child who she's not only losing the ability to take responsibility for her own behavior by doing this, because after all she's a sinner. She can't do anything about her nature. But she's also losing her ability to distinguish between what's real and what's fantasy. And that's one of the most damaging parts of all this, is that you're telling people that the characters from a Bronze Age myth are real. And if you don't get on your knees and beg the head guy for forgiveness or whatever, then it's going to send you to a horrible place. It's an awful lot of baggage to put on a small child. And in fact, Nathan Phelps, who is the son of Fred Phelps.
The famous Phelps clan.
Yes. He grew up in this, and he eventually broke away. And at some point after he broke away from the Phelps clan, he was living in California. He had children of his own. Things were going good. He's in this church, and he was describing the turning point for him when he realized just how damaging this sort of upbringing was for his children. And I'm going to read a portion of what he said in this. It said, the turning point was one Christmas when Nate decided to teach his children about God. In the end, his son Tyler began crying in the backseat of the car, saying that he didn't want to go to hell. And then Nate says, he wanted to believe because he didn't want to go to hell. I was just stunned because I didn't know what I had said or how I had left him with that fear. I thought I was doing a good job of presenting it without the fear. Thinking about it after the fact, I realized you can't do that. With a young mind, it doesn't matter. You can try as much as you want to talk about how good God is, but the bottom line is there's this intolerably frightening punishment if you don't accept it. And how does a young mind deal with that? And I guess that's my whole point about this religion-inspired child abuse, that you're asking a very small child to accept adult consequences, to sort of absorb this horrific punishment. And I liken it to allowing a 4-year-old child to watch horror movies, and have them try to deal with that.
Let me ask you something, because this is an ongoing disagreement that I kind of have with both Matt and Richard Dawkins.
Okay.
Richard Dawkins hasn't noticed, but... do you think all religion is child abuse, or all teaching of religion to kids is child abuse? And if not, at what point does it cross the line?
I think that you can teach children about religions.
Sure.
Without that being abusive.
Okay.
But I think the minute you start telling them that there's a God out there who hands down the rules, and that if you don't obey, there's a punishment waiting for you that's going to last forever, then I think that becomes abusive.
This is a point that might actually be a disagreement between you and me, and we're both parents of fairly young kids.
Yeah.
Suppose you believed that was really, really true. I talked to Ben about evolution. A Christian family, if they had the authority to do so, would probably say, you're teaching your kid a horrible lie, and you should not be allowed to get away with that.
Yeah.
Which is why, as a parent, I tend to be more lenient to parents in what they should be able to get away with, because I'd rather err on the side of less society control over my rights as a parent.
Right. Well, I think two things. First of all, there's overwhelming evidence in support of evolution.
Well,
And-
yeah,
and so-
but I mean, depending on what paradigm you take, I mean, the evidence is all from the scientific establishment that's trying to censor people. So if you take as experts not people who study things and investigate reality, but the pronouncements of a 2,000-year-old book, which many people do, as your axioms in your belief system, so to speak, it's hard to say that one side should, that even our side should trump their right to teach what they think is true to their kids.
Yeah. And I guess I would not say that they deserve to have their kids taken away from them or something like that, but I certainly think that some of these folks need some parenting classes. They need to understand a little bit more about early childhood development and how kids see the world.
Okay.
And one of the stories that I use is that my son, who just recently turned 3, a couple of months ago, we had told him the story of the 3 little pigs, and he had had this book read to him at school, and he really likes the story. Okay, he still likes it. But a couple of months ago, he got really scared of the big bad wolf. And every night when we'd tuck him into bed, we would have to explain to him that the house is really strong, the big bad wolf can't get in here.
Is it made of bricks?
No, but close. And so and we're here to protect him, and that nothing bad can happen to him. And we even had to, at one point, take him around and show him that all the doors were locked and everything was secure. And so, the big bad wolf's an imaginary character, and that's really obvious to all of us. But to him, this was real, and certainly his fear of this was real. So, I know that this is something that he's going to grow out of. In fact, he already kind of has, and now he tells us, don't worry, the big bad wolf's not real. But part of that is because we were very consistent in the message. This is a character in a story. It's not real. It can't hurt you. And so my point on this is that the big bad wolf will never have any power over him. He'll never do something out of fear that the big bad wolf's going to get him. Okay? But what if we had told him that the characters in another fairy tale were real, and that they were going to condemn him to hell if he didn't do what this book told him to do, and that, oh, by the way, you can never get it exactly right, so you're always going to be on your knees about something. I think that would be abusive.
If you thought it wasn't true, which
Yeah,
I do.
I see.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I see I see your point, that I think that from the impact on the child, that the parents' beliefs about whether it's true or not, it doesn't mitigate the damage done to the child.
Okay. I actually have a couple more things to say from the perspective of an atheist parent, but I think we should wait until we get somebody a little further down the line who has that as a question. But in the meantime, can I take a call?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
I feel bad about accidentally not taking Brandon, who is long distance from California. So, Brandon, you've been on for about 25 minutes. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, guys. How are you?
Good.
I'm well.
Good. I'm actually originally from Dallas, and I wish that I had known about you guys when I lived there. I would have come down and had some dinner with you guys. But anyway,
Great.
I love the show. I just wanted to call in and talk about original sin. I think you guys mentioned it earlier on in the episode, and I think it sort of ties back to that woman's email to Christian and her child that she was, bringing up, and you guys were talking about that. And I've always thought about this, how original sin is always, I think wasn't it Paul's idea? Wasn't he the one who actually sort of invented this?
I'm not sure. A lot of things in Christianity did come from Paul. And Christians claimed that the whole original sin concept originated from the Adam and Eve story. I'm not sure who you could attribute the specific idea of original sin to.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay, but it wasn't, the Jews didn't believe it, correct?
I don't think
Well, Jews don't believe that you have to be cleansed of original sin, obviously. So, yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay. I guess I meant like the label original sin was probably tied in to through the doctrine that it has
Yeah,
to be cleansed.
Wikipedia tells me it is specifically Christian, but it's long, so I don't want to read the whole thing while you're on the air.
Right. But I guess my point was that if, and correct me if I'm wrong, most people, I think, even most Christians in today's time, sort of take the Adam and Eve story as a myth, that they weren't actual real people.
Right.
So if we go with that thinking, then they didn't actually really sin, and there wasn't actually an original sin to be cleansed of. So in effect, Jesus died in vain, right?
I suppose you could argue that as a Christian, all people are bad, and it doesn't matter if Adam did that one particular thing. I mean, the argument I've heard is that God is infinitely good, and therefore anything you do looks infinitely bad from his perspective because it's not near what he does.
I see.
I find that silly, but at least I know what the argument would be.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess I hadn't heard that, because that is quite silly. But
Okay.
yeah, I guess I was just trying to get to the point that, I mean, if you sort of take that out of the doctrine, the whole original sin, then it all just sort of falls apart. But I guess being a Christian, you want to believe that, no matter what, so you're going to try to make excuses for it. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
okay. Well, I just wanted to get some clarification on that.
Okay, thanks for calling.
All right. Thanks, Seth.
All right, thanks.
Since Brandon did mention the after-show dinner, which everybody would love to come to, don't miss your opportunity if you're here in
Yeah.
Texas. The dinner will be at Threadgill's, starting at 6:30 p.m. The address is 301 West Riverside Drive in Austin. Come on down if you're atheist friendly, and not if you're just trying to annoy us, etc. You already heard that. Okay. How about we take the guy with the question about raising kids?
Okay, sure.
All right. That would be Kevin in Seattle. How are you doing?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, Russell.
Hi, Kevin.
And Jen. Yes, I have a question about raising a child from that point of view. Having been raised a Mormon in Utah, where I was very much indoctrinated from a very early age, and that really made a train wreck of my adolescence, with the guilt and being told I was elite and always running against my own inadequacy as to live up to that. And it really, I really had to come to grounds and face the fact that I really feel that indoctrination is just outright abuse because of that, because it really does, I think, all children perhaps, some children are better able to cope with that conflict, but I wasn't, and that really led me to, some really bad things. But with that, being a parent as an atheist, then how do you handle? And now I'm becoming a prospective parent. My significant other are thinking about having a child.
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And I'm wondering, and I know you both have some experience in this. As a child explores and starts to question you about God, and how do we handle that when maybe they start to, as they grow up, and maybe other children have interest on them, other friends, maybe they even try to convert them. How do we just maybe some advice or maybe some of your own thoughts on how we would handle that? How do we do we run a risk of trying to indoctrinate our own children in our own, prejudices? And but at the same time, having been down the road I am, it seems sometimes that risk might somewhat be good. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Do you want to go first?
Well,
I know
actually,
we'll both have opinions.
Yeah, my son is actually too young to be asking questions about religion right now. We haven't told him anything about religion, so he's completely unaware that there's anything like that out there. Remember, this is the kid that 2 months ago thought the big bad wolf was real, so this is not a topic that I think that a 3-year-old is prepared to deal with. And so, we're going to let that ride for a while. We don't have any family members close by who are religious, and so we don't have to worry about family members attempting to indoctrinate him or anything. But one of the things that I recommend is get a book by Dale McGowan called Parenting Beyond Belief. It's really good. I think you'll find some valuable things in there. And I can just tell you from my perspective, what I plan to do is when he's older, we're going to explain about religious beliefs. And we'll actually start a little introduction of that this year around the holidays, because this is really the first year that he's old enough to understand there's something really big going on at the end of December. So we want to start explaining to him that around this time of the year, lots of people all over the world have celebrated different things. And we'll talk about all those different things. And, that, oh, by the way, some people believe that some of these things really happened, but we don't think that. And then, at some point, he will have the ability to make his own mind up about that sort of thing. So anyway, that's the plan. We'll see how it works.
Okay. If I can toot my own horn for a second, I would recommend that you go to atheist-experience.com and look through the archives, because in episode 490, I actually did an entire show on atheist parenting. Don't know if you were aware of that.
Oh, no, that would be cool.
Okay, so you can probably catch that on Google Video still. The short version is, my son is 6 years old, but also I have two teenage stepdaughters, one of whom turned 18 not long ago, and the other is just shy of being an adult also. So, I have some of my own perspectives. I'll just focus on the 6-year-old, although the older ones had some experience with being pressured by their friends in school to join their church and things. But with my young son, I actually started pretty early, not talking about religion, but also playing a little game with him that we called real and pretend. And basically I would ask him about something, like, a character like Superman, and he would tell me if it was real or pretend, or the President of the United States, and he would say it's real. And so, I got him sort of practicing this critical thinking, and when he got it wrong, I would explain to him, like Superman, he can tell that cartoons aren't real, but when you see Christopher Reeve, he looks like a real person. So I had to explain special effects and things like that, and it helped us explore areas where it's possible to be gullible. When the question of God comes up, I'm actually really cautious, because I always say some people think that he's real, and we don't. But you have to make up your own mind. And he's actually going through a phase right now where he's decided, at first he was like, I'm an atheist because you two are. But now he's going through a phase where he thinks heaven might be real, and I ask him why, and he thinks about it. So, he's kind of agnostic. But I trust him to make good decisions, so that's part of it. Let's see. So I could, to touch on what we were talking about earlier, I could see myself as an atheist just saying, there is no God, that's stupid. Mm-hmm. And I could see a Christian family coming and saying, that's abusive, you shouldn't take that extreme position where you tell him what's real because his eternal soul is at stake. And I would probably actually advise an atheist parent against taking that approach, but I certainly wouldn't say that they shouldn't be allowed to.
Yeah, and I don't want to tell my son what to believe. Mm-hmm. I would much rather let him come to that on his own, because he'll be much more secure in what he believes if he comes to it on his own than if I just give it to him. If I give it to him, somebody else can come along and give him something worse.
Right.
So I would rather him make up his own mind. And it fosters critical thinking.
Bear in mind that it doesn't matter if you have specific family members who will pressure a kid. Unless you keep your kid in a bubble, right. They're going to run into many of the 80% of people in America who specifically believe in the Christian God.
Right.
So another thing that I was going to mention is fairly early on when I was reading Ben's stories, I read him the Bible along with all the other imaginary stories that I was reading him. So, I mean, I would read The Cat in the Hat one night and then Noah another night. And so that kind of factored into our game where he would have to identify whether something was real or not.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I recommend it. They're actually pretty bad stories, but,
Yeah.
but you know...
yeah, I can see him not getting really attached to that one.
Right, which is a good kind of inoculation activity.
Yeah.
I think you've made some very good suggestions. I'm really interested in trying some of these out eventually, of course, in the future.
Okay.
But one thing also, when we talk about abuse, I guess I think the most important thing is that even if a child is as a child, I was a questioner. I was always a skeptic. I think in nature, and that led to a lot of conflict between my parents, and led to a lot of the bad things, a lot of the guilt and everything like that. It was because I was always going against my own nature. And I suppose if as an atheist I had a child who was predisposed to believe, I would have to surrender my own interest in that way, you know, and have to just give him the unconditional love and support, and be willing to do that. And I wish that we as a country would have more of that attitude of being a lot more open to our children's freedom, and even if that means against our own belief system.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thanks a lot for calling, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm glad that helps a little. Let's move on. Do you want to go back to your topic?
Let's go ahead and keep doing some calls here.
Okay, let's talk to Chris.
Chris.
Ask about my father. Hello?
Chris,
Hello.
you're on. Ask about your father?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Anyway, I had a question here about my father died. Actually, it was about 4 weeks ago. And I mean, what do we do to deal with something like that? You know, it's not. I mean, you know, this is one of the areas where I think religion does give people something of value to make them feel better, and yet, if you don't believe in God, what do you have?
Yeah, well, I guess I lost my father about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, you know, my dealing with that is fairly recent. And I can tell you that, you know, I don't see the grieving process as being that much different from, you know, between religious and non-religious people. You know, it really is just something you have to work through. And I don't know, I would hesitate to give anybody advice on how to get through that process. One thing that I know is that from my perspective, religion did not help my stepmother deal with the loss of my father, and in many ways it insulated her from the fact that he was dying, and prevented her from actually preparing for that. So I think it's not universally good. Now, she did have some, you know, a support structure and everything after he was gone and everything, but you know, people are human, even people in a church, and at some point they get tired of dealing with the weepy widow, you know, who needs somebody to prop her up every day. So my suggestion is that if you're really struggling with the grief, see a counselor, and that's the same advice I would give to someone who's religious. So,
For me, I've dealt with a few losses. You know, I'm not that old, so my grandparents just went a number of years ago. My last surviving grandmother died this year, and so did one of my cats. And so did George Carlin, who I admired very much. And I wish that I did have this belief that a part of their personality continued and still had thoughts and feelings, and that death wasn't real. But wishing for something doesn't make it true. For me, what I find helps somewhat is the notion that when somebody is gone, that person may be gone, but they're part of an unbroken chain of people who influence each other's lives. And I know that my grandmother influenced my life greatly, and you know, I continue to feel that influence to this day. And similarly, when our cat died, I told Ben that the cat lived a good life, and she, that we would always have memories of her, and just that mental process is a way that her life had meaning. So that's kind of my take on it.
Well, certainly I agree. Although I've got to say, I've lost all four of my grandparents.
Yeah.
Really, it is not the same. It's definitely something. I think it's big. I think and not big. I mean, it's big when you have a child, of course, too. And I found out when I went up to my dad's funeral too, that a few months ago, one of my favorite teachers had died, and believe me, that's a big one too. But is it all right too if I recommend a group? I mean, there are a lot of groups out there for dealing with them. But I went to one last Sunday, for example, and all they wanted to do was talk about Jesus and how we are a sinner. But there are some groups out there that you can go to that are not religious based. But I don't know how many of them there are, because it seemed like a lot of them were religious based. But I did manage to go to one last Monday. They were wonderful people, and I think some religious people did come there, but it wasn't something that was required.
Yeah. In fact, I think that depending on what your loved one died from, there are often support groups that are specifically for people who've lost someone to that disease. I know my father had multiple myeloma, and there are all kinds of support groups online and usually in most major cities for stuff like that. And so, I think that if you've found a group locally that's reasonably, comfortable for you to interact with, I think that's a very good thing to do.
Is it all right if I mention them on here? I just want, would kind of be an advertisement, but I highly recommend them.
Sure, I think that's okay. I mean, they're not getting money anyway, right?
It's just a nonprofit. The group is called For the Love of Christy. It was founded by some parents who lost their daughter to a drunk driver, and they have a lot of programs, and they have programs for kids who lose parents, and programs for teenagers, and they have a lot of different. I went over there last Monday, and there were about 40 people there, and then we break off into smaller groups and just talk about things. And I mean, obviously the only qualification is that you have to have had somebody who died recently, although I don't know what their definition of recent is. So in my case,
I can't imagine them wanting to turn a lot of people away. So
yeah,
they were wonderful people, and if you just go to it's For the Love of Christy, it's over on Hancock. It's not very easy to find in the dark, but and they do expect you to call first before you instead of just showing up for a meeting. But definitely, that's a wonderful group of people to deal with.
Well, I mean, I support the notion of people joining groups, because I mean, one of the ways people deal with things in general is by being social about it and reaching out to other people who are still alive. So yeah, do that. I
think this is something too that where maybe atheist groups or secular groups could get out there and try to provide more things like this, because it often does happen that suddenly when there's a death in the family or something, somebody who's never been to church in years suddenly starts going to church again or something like that. It's because people have it's a very intense emotional event in someone's life.
Right. Unfortunately, religions are specifically geared up to take advantage of people who are at vulnerable points in their life. I mean, it's not only the death of somebody. It's they specifically go after people who are poor or in desperate need or drug users or in prison, and they say, hey, you have terrible problems in your life, like lots of people do at many different points. Here's your magic solution.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I think it's kind of shameful myself.
You got to remember too, people who are predatory can smell out people like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it is, but they just have that's just the word, because they just seem to know, hey, he's an easy target, we'll go after him. I mean, I don't know if smell is the right word to use, but that seems to be
good as any.
They just have a radar for the right people, and I think in the past, at points in my life, I actually had lots of people like that approaching me, and they just come out, and then after, I remember I was out at work, and then after 2 or 3 minutes, a guy said, oh, by the way, how's your face? You know, it's just suddenly out of nowhere. It's amazing how these things happen, but certainly it's something you have to deal with now and then, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was, you know, it was one of those things too. You know, having been raised in a Catholic family, I just went through the motions and went back and played Catholic again at the funeral and all that stuff. I mean, you kind of have to do that. I mean, it's your dad. You know, just go through the motions even though you're faking it.
Yeah, I actually didn't do that at my father's funeral.
Yeah.
And we had, it was in a church, the church that he attended, and there were lots of people there who were, obviously believers, his pastor and everybody. Some people made some, eulogies that involved religion. There were like several people that eulogized him up there. So they included, his faith and everything. That's fine. I mean, it's appropriate. Mm-hmm. He was at one point, before he got very ill, he was studying to be a minister. So, and then my brother actually did, the main part of the eulogy, even though my brother's not particularly religious. But, I think overall it wasn't something I felt uncomfortable attending. And I didn't have to pretend that I was there as a religious person.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I'm real sorry for your loss, and if you feel the need to reach out and be social, then feel free to join us for dinner sometime.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you met it. I've certainly found some good groups out there, and it's, I don't know how many secular groups there are like this, though. I have a feeling there aren't too many. Just, we just happen to live in a city where people like to form groups, and there are, I would say this is a pretty non-religious city, although certainly Texas.
For Texas, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Bye.
All right, thanks for calling. And if you are local and would like to join us for dinner in a little under an hour now, the show's going to be ending in 23 minutes. And at 6:30, you can join us at Threadgill's on 301 West Riverside Drive. Great restaurant. Come on over.
Okay, so before we get to the callers again, I wanted to go ahead and just wrap up real quick here. There were lots of people that came online, and this woman that has this blog.
This is about the 4-year-old.
This is about the 4-year-old. The woman that has this blog post about this 4-year-old child of hers. Her name is Jean. Jean came back on to respond to all the criticism, and she basically said something to the effect, as you pointed out, hey, I didn't mean for people to comment on this and don't agree with me.
People do not quite get the concept sometimes of what a blog is.
Yeah, and then she goes on to, because some people had challenged her and said, hey, do you think that you're evil and you're a sinner? And she comes back on and she says, yes. And her reason for believing this is that at some point years ago she had an abortion. Mm-hmm. And she is so sorry because she killed her child by having this abortion and all this stuff. And so I find it really ironic that she practices a religion that says it's okay to emotionally abuse your child, but you're supposed to feel guilty forever for having an abortion. So that's pretty much what I have today. That and she's using the Bible, or excuse me, the authority of Scripture to raise her children. So I fear for her children. And the sad thing is, this is apparently not an uncommon child-rearing belief among certain Christians. The majority of the Christians who posted on that blog, and there were about 405 comments on there as of this morning. Mm-hmm. Most of the Christians support her. And
no surprise.
Most of the atheists say this is child abuse. And in fact, I think somebody did call the authorities. She lives in England. They did call the authorities, and so I think she was investigated. Yeah. But likely...
First of all, we're outnumbered.
Yeah.
And second of all, you have to be a little careful with that, because I know that our good friend Possum Mama, who runs a blog, has gone through a similar process where some Christians decided that she was behaving inappropriately with her kids. Which is completely unfounded.
Yeah. And as I said, I would not advocate taking somebody's child away from them just for teaching religion, even if, it gets pretty egregious. But, I really think that folks like this need some parenting classes, and certainly they need to understand early childhood development and how easy it is to damage a child by teaching them things like hell and don't make baby Jesus cry, that sort of thing, when they're 3 or 4 years old. So,
I'd like to make a meta observation about the show since I've been out for a few weeks. It seems to me we're getting international calls now. I mean, we've gotten calls today from California. We've got one queued up from Canada. I know we talked to somebody before the show who was from somewhere in England. That's cool. On the other hand, it worries me a little bit because a lot of what's frequently driven the show is people calling in locally who weren't necessarily seeking out an atheist show. I'm afraid we're getting too many friendly people. On the other hand, I noticed that in the chat room for the Ustream, a lot of people are taunting some Christians to please call in. And I'm not sure... I would like to encourage those people in a friendly fashion that we are very nice people, and we would like to hear from you. And the chat room is going nuts. I just mentioned them. Okay, shut up, you people. I'm going to go next with Scott in San Antonio. Scott?
Hi, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Fine, thanks.
Well, recently I went to Washington, D.C. On a business trip, and I passed by, it looks like some library, and I saw this lady, and she was protesting against abortions, and I want to fuck you, fat bitch, fuck you.
And then we got people like that.
oh yeah,
But we were hoping for somebody actually entertaining.
yeah.
So,
Scott, if you ever want to call back, if you're actually willing to ask a civil question and talk to us, we'll be happy to talk to you. And you don't have to pretend to be an atheist to get through. We will take your call.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to go on to Cailey in Ontario, Canada. Hello, Cailey.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
It's going great, thanks.
All right, I have a question. I grew up in a really religious household. I now have a 7-month-old child, and my father is a minister. And I thought I had gotten through to them before the child was born, that he would be raised as a free thinker, and that he'll be able to make a decision on his own. But just recently I had a conversation with my mom, who said that I was sending my child to hell.
What a loving message, huh?
I know. Am I supposed to provide visits now, once he gets older? I don't want them indoctrinating him any, like I was. I was terrified my whole life that I was going to hell because I had bad thoughts in my head.
Yeah. Well, I would say that, as the parent, you're the one who decides who gets to see your kid and under what circumstances.
Oh, I know. Have his grandparents.
Yeah, and that was going to be my second comment, is that, I was facing the same issue before my father's death, and actually, my stepmother is still alive, and she's since remarried, and her husband is also very religious, so we may still face that issue. Also, the other set of grandparents, they're Catholic, so there's still this possibility that you send the kid off for a visit, on the summer, and during the summer or something like that, and they get taken to church. Mm-hmm. And I think that as long as you raise your child to think for himself, and you do as, perhaps what Russell suggested, intersperse the Bible stories with the fairy tales. Mm-hmm. So you get all the fairy tales, and then they'll just think of the Bible stories as the really boring fairy tales. I think that he'll probably be okay.
I'm curious mainly because I'm afraid that he's gonna, when he grows up, that he'll doubt that he'll think that I'm wrong and that my grandparents are right, and then there's gonna be a big parental issue there, where he doesn't trust me, anything I say.
Yeah, I think that's a perennial parental fear. is that, your kid's going to grow up and do something or think something that you don't agree with. But
I've actually thought about this and wondered if the worst thing that could happen is my child grows up to decide he's Christian. And actually, I don't. I think the worst thing that my child could decide is that he's anti-intellectual. I mean, that he grows up sort of not reading, not considering things in a skeptical fashion in general, and I recognize that it's possible for people to be reasonable and Christian and disagree with me. And, I think I would rather have somebody who is smart and thoughtful and rejects atheism than somebody who is atheist and sort of dull.
yeah.
Well, that's true. When I was growing up, I was told that evolution was a theory, and that
It is gloriously a theory.
Yeah, I was basically creationism was the only way, and it was absolute truth. And so when I asked questions like, why is the grass green, my parents would say, because God painted it green. So I've had to pretty much
with chlorophyll.
And I guess it's a thought that terrifies me that my child's gonna come back dumber after visiting grandma. I was just wondering what your thought about that was.
Well, you know what? I think you're going to do just fine.
I think as a parent, you really have more influence than anybody else.
Yeah.
And so, you've got to extend a certain amount of trust to your kid.
All right, thank you.
And just treat them as a reasonable person.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks.
All right, bye.
Let's talk to Kevin in Buda.
Okay. Nope, wrong. Kevin, I think I got the buttons
am I
right.
on the air?
Yes, you're on the air.
Hi, Kevin.
Oh, hi.
I hear you finally we have somebody who disagrees with us. It's been a boring show.
Yeah, I'm a Christian, and I just think that raising your kids as atheism is just not a good idea, because it deprives them of a spiritual connection with others, and basically by raising them as atheists, you're pretty much just fucking them in the butt.
I need to work on my reflexes.
Yeah.
Stupid buttons.
Yeah.
This is not a good video
Okay.
game.
So are there any Christians who
No,
don't
they're
have
not.
a potty mouth? out there?
Christians, you guys are being represented by crank callers. Is that really what you want?
Yeah.
Please, call in. All right, Don. You're next. Don?
Hello?
Hi, Don. You're on.
Oh, hi. Yeah, sorry. There's like a 3-second delay on the TV, and it's messing me up a little bit.
Yeah, the best thing to do is turn your TV down and just pay attention to the phone.
Okay. Yeah, those last two prank calls. That's it's a shame, really, because it
goes with
I
the
think it
territory of public
undermines
access.
It undermines the exchange of ideas, and it's silly, and I think most people recognize that. But anyway, here's my thing. I am an atheist, and I agree with you guys, virtually everything that you say, and I think that you obviously are well studied, and you make logical arguments, and you're reasonable and rational, and that's all anybody can expect in a debate. Here's the part where I think atheism rubs people the wrong way, and that is the notion. It's really a paradigm shift in a way. It's the notion of separating religion and the dogmas that are associated with it, and the culture and heritage and history of one's people. Okay? If that makes any sense. For example, I am an atheist. However, if I throw away Christianity, for example, I am in essence throwing away 2,000 years of my bloodline.
Okay. How so?
And their culture and their history and their experiences.
You're not throwing it away, you're just not choosing to believe in it. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, if you're Greek, then you have Zeus and stuff in your background, and you can study them and respect those, you know, the thought that went into it without thinking that it's real.
I understand that, but I'm just telling you that the way this comes across, the reason that I think that you get so many irrational, wacky callers who are Christians, I'm going to tell you that 90% of Christians don't really believe that, well, okay, let me scale that down. Let me say 70%. Don't really believe that the earth is 5,000 years old. And that
I think that more than that actually do believe, but I mean, I don't think it's a majority, but I think that you might be underestimating.
Okay. Let's say 50%. It's a sizable number of people who are intelligent people who reject all of the mythology of Christianity, but they're not prepared to disown and forget their ancestors and their culture and their heritage and their history.
Okay, well, that may be true. I think we're going to have to move on. We're down to 8 minutes in the show, and I think we've got a caller that we want to get to, so thanks for calling, Don.
Okay.
One more time, I'd like to plug Threadgills after the show, and also mention that if you are one of the people who it looks like won't get on the air today, you can always email us after the show. The address is tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to the host, the co-hosts, and all the producers and people involved with the show. Somebody will surely answer your question. They've been really good about that lately. We're going to go on to Craig. Craig?
Hello?
Yes?
Hello?
Hello, you're on.
Hi, yes, I'm a Methodist, I'm a Christian, and
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you guys are representing Christians really well today. Thanks.
Well, I'm not really sure that they are
probably
what they say, but anyway, Christina. Christina, you're next on the air.
Hi. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, Christina, you need to turn your TV down and just pay attention to the phone because there's a delay.
TV is going down.
Okay.
Okay.
I was wanting to share something. I have some friends that are pagan, and what they tell their children is really nice. It's, if anyone asks you about Jesus, just say, Jesus was a nice guy, and I'm sorry that he died.
I'm not even sure I would categorize Jesus as a nice guy.
Yeah,
but
well,
you know,
in
some way.
You know, they're grade school level, so try to work.
Right.
So that was my tidbits on free-thinking children.
Yeah, I'm not sure that teaching them pagan beliefs is actually teaching them to be free thinkers.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for calling.
Okay, I think we have.
All right, Chuck.
We'll do one last call and then.
Hello.
Hello.
Chuck.
Yeah, I was just wanting to make a comment about explaining God to children, and I think that you should keep it as simple as possible, and I think the best way, and since God is kind of associated with Christmas and Santa Claus, is whenever your kid gets to the age where he's starting to say, hey, wait a minute now, is this Santa Claus guy real? And you explain to him, well, no, he's not real. And that would be a good time to say, and, God is not real, and leave it at that, end of story. Don't try to confuse them, don't confuse them with, trying to make them understand. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, actually, in my son's case, we haven't even actually told him that Santa Claus is real. I mean, he knows a story about
never
Santa
did.
Claus.
We
Yeah.
actually, took him to the mall and said, "Look, a guy in a suit dressed like Santa Claus."
Yeah, and of course, this is really the first year where he's starting to really get some of the Christian, or the, not the Christian symbolism, but the whole big deal about Christmas and all this stuff. And so, now is the appropriate time to introduce a lot of these stories. There's Rudolph, there's, the whole Santa Claus myth and all the stories associated with that. And, I don't think that you actually have to tell them or even lead them to believe that stuff's ever real. I think if you start off telling them,
Well, I mean,
those are
at
fun
some point,
stories.
the older kids are going to be telling him, or making fun of him. Do you still believe in Santa Claus?
And he can tell them, I never did,
And at that point, I just think that explaining to a kid that there is no God is, you shouldn't complicate it. You shouldn't try to make him understand. Just explain to him, there's no Santa Claus and there's no God, and leave it at that. And
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think it's a really simple, straightforward message.
Yeah, all right.
No need to be complicated.
All right, thanks.
All right, thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling.
Okay.
You're done with your topic, right?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Okay. I'd actually like to bring up something entertaining this week that I found, as I find so many things, through P.Z. Myers of Pharyngula. There was a very amusing editorial in the Wall Street Journal opinion pages, which, when you hear where it's from, you always know you're in for a good time.
Yeah.
Do you know why the economic crisis is happening right now? It is, of course, because of our war on Christmas. Daniel Henninger, and I encourage lots of people to write to people and express their thoughtful opinions about his brilliant conjecture, says that notwithstanding the cardboard Santas who seem to have arrived in stores this year near Halloween, the holiday season starts in 7 days with Thanksgiving, and so it will come to pass once again that many people will spend 4 weeks biting on tongues lest they say Merry Christmas, and perchance give offense. Christmas, the holiday that dare not speak its name. Are we out of time already? It's called Mad Max and the Meltdown. You can look it up. Thanks to everybody for watching, and thanks to our great crew who are right there.
Yay.
What a fine-looking crowd. And we'll be back again in 2 weeks, or in 1 week. When Matt will be back in this chair, come to Threadgills and meet us while you have the chance. Goodbye, everyone. It's been great.
Bye.